Bees had been living in this backyard shed for at least 2 years. The landlord wanted to call an exterminator, but the family who lived here wanted to save the bees, so they called me. When I lifted up the floor, I found a huge hive full of gentle bees. The hive was so big I had to remove another section of floor to access the entire thing. Then I started removing the hive. Whatever I removed from the original hive went right into the new one so the bees would have everything they need to survive. After I removed all of the comb, I started scooping bees into the new hive.
Erica, you are now the world's most famous beekeeper. You have millions who are watching as you stick your hand into a pile of bees and save these guys. How did you get into it in the first place?
You know, my entire life, I've just loved animals. I've loved nature. And when I was a kid, I was really into bugs. That's just what I was into growing up. So I spent a lot of time in my backyard, playing with insects and collecting them in jars and trying to keep them as pets and care for them and observe them. But this lifelong love of insects led me to take a beekeeping class about 10 years ago. And I took that class with no intention of becoming a beekeeper. I really just wanted to learn more about bees. I had heard that bees were in trouble and we needed to save the bees, and I didn't know what that meant. So I took that class and I walked away just fascinated with the world of honeybees. And I started to learn more about them and read everything I could about bees. And I decided to start my first hive in my backyard. And now I have over 150 hives all across Central Texas.
Unreal how much you've done in the last 3 years. And part of it is you're so calm. You have this voice as you describe what's going on that everyone else would be freaking out, myself included, and yet you seem to view them as friends. How have you kind of overcome what is a natural fear most people have to these things?
It's so interesting to me to read those comments about people saying how calm I seem when I'm with the bees. And I just think that there's no other way to be when you're with a colony of bees. You're trying to work alongside them. We all have the same goal for them, but they can pick up on the way you're feeling, I think. And I just think that the only way to approach a colony of bees is with calmness and care and intention.
And talk about the places where you find these beehives. They're sometimes unusual spots. Where are you finding these things?
Bees sometimes build their homes in places that humans don't necessarily want them to build. So I found beehives in, the walls of houses and tires, in people's front yards, backyards, I mean, everywhere. And so it's always exciting to wake up each morning and not know what kind of call I'm going to get or where I'm going to go and be removing bees from. And every hive removal is completely different and they're totally unique. And it's just really exciting.
Well, and dramatic, and the gratitude people feel. Because what are you ultimately doing with the bees? What's kind of obviously we know bees are for honey, but they also serve a variety of other purposes. How are you utilizing these hives?
After I rescue a colony of bees, I bring it back to my house and I care for them. I have about 50 hives on my property, and the bees can choose to leave again or find another place to live if they would like, but I give them everything they need so that they can continue to do the important work they do. And I should say, to answer your question about honey, Michael, so as a professional beekeeper, harvesting and selling honey is just not what I love to do. So I don't actually sell any honey from the bees. Each bee in her entire lifetime only makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. It's such a small amount. And I was just very lucky early on in my beekeeping journey to realize that harvesting and selling honey is just not what I love about being a beekeeper.
And for people who don't understand the nuances of bees and the queen bee, can you just provide a brief primer on what you think makes this species such a fascinating one to study and to engage with on such a daily basis?
One of my favorite things about bees is the way that they live and work all together for the good of the colony. A honeybee colony is a super organism, so no bee thinks of herself or himself as an individual, but they all work together to make collective decisions for the good of the colony. And I think it's extraordinary, and we can learn so much from them, and I just really admire them.
Have you ever been afraid as you're kind of getting your arm right in there? What was kind of the most terrifying experience you've had as you pursue this?
You know, I definitely think that we should have a healthy fear of bees, but I also think that we should have a healthy understanding and respect for bees. And most of the scariest situations I've been in as a beekeeper doing these live removals have actually had nothing to do with the bees themselves. You know, I've almost stepped on a rattlesnake before. I have been chased by a longhorn bull around its pen and then had to do the hive removal in the pen of the longhorn bull. I had my truck running the whole time. The tailgate was down. I had an escape plan, and I walked away fine. But, you know, my job takes me to some very unique locations and I have some really cool and unique experiences. So, you know, it's definitely a dangerous job. There's a big element of physical activity involved. It's very physical, and I just never know what I'm going to get into.
And you do it without a suit. That seems crazy to me. Why do you do it without a suit?
Well, I always wear beekeeping gear when I need to, and there are just as many videos of me wearing, you know, a veil as there are not, but this one in particular was the one that went viral, and I'm not wearing a suit or a veil just because the bees were so good. They have such a gentle temperament. It was a very good colony of bees, and, you know, I'm in Texas. It was hot in that shed. The beekeeping gear, you know, you lose a lot of comfort, but also you lose a lot of dexterity and mobility and visibility. And so for that removal that went viral from that backyard shed, I just chose that day to not wear any gear, and the bees let me work alongside them just fine without gear. And I just thought it was a better decision for me and the bees that day.
Yeah, magic moment there. I mean, for growing up in the '90s, there was that movie. What was it?
My girl.
Yeah, My Girl. That's so many people.
Yeah, so I feel so lucky. I've had some incredible opportunities and experiences come from this. But one thing that happened was Jamie Lee Curtis from My Girl actually reposted that video of me doing that bee removal, and I thought that was just the best.
That's incredible. That is a true legendary status. I mean, what you do is so fascinating to watch, and I'm so glad people around the world are discovering your love of bees and learning along the way.
You know, the best thing about everything happening right now is that more people than ever are seeing the important work that bees and beekeepers do every day. And bees are so vital to our existence. They're important to our ecosystem and our food system. And I just hope that people, you know, can learn about bees and have a better understanding and respect for bees.
Well, thank you, Erica, for chatting with us today and saving the bees out there. Keep it up and be safe.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Have a good day.